The residential neighborhood spreading across the California suburbs was bathed in the quiet glow of morning sunlight. In front of the neatly arranged houses, well-maintained lawns and colorful flower beds stretched out, telling the story of the peaceful lives of middle-class American families. In such a corner stood a white-walled two-story house, where Jennifer Cooper was facing another busy morning. "Tyler, have a great day at school today," Jenny said, placing her hand gently on her beloved son's shoulder with a warm smile. 9-year-old Tyler, his face still retaining traces of childhood innocence, beamed brightly and kissed his mother's cheek. "Mom, I love you. I have a math test today. I'm sure I'll get a good grade." Tyler's innocent words warmed Jenny's heart. Her son had truly grown into such an honest and bright child. Neighbors often said, "That boy is so well-mannered and promising," which filled her with pride as a mother. "Be careful on your way. I'll be at the library until pickup time." Jenny worked as a librarian at the local public library. She found great fulfillment in her job of supporting the community's intellectual pursuits in the quiet environment surrounded by books. Especially helping children choose books and organizing storytime events were times she truly enjoyed from the heart. While brewing coffee in the kitchen, Jenny thought about her husband Mark. He worked as an accountant at a local accounting firm and was a meticulous, responsible man. 10 years had passed since their marriage, and their relationship was stable, but lately Mark seemed a bit tired. "I'm tired from work being so busy," he had said last night before going to bed early. Jenny understood that accounting work had busy seasons, so she wasn't particularly worried. She believed that couples each had their own pace, and it was important to live considerately of each other. The time to finish work at the library and pick up Tyler from school was the most enjoyable part of Jenny's day. The moments spent chatting with other mothers in front of the school gate while waiting for the children to return made her feel connected to the local community. She was particularly close to Sarah Williams, a mother from the same class. Sarah was actively involved in PTA activities. Her son was in the same class as Tyler, and the two children got along well as friends. "Jenny, you're such a wonderful mother. Tyler looks so happy," Sarah would always say, praising Jenny's parenting. Every time she heard such words, Jenny felt as though her efforts as a mother were being recognized. In PTA activities, she actively participated in planning and managing school events. Working with other mothers to ensure the success of events that children could enjoy, such as the Spring Sports Festival, Fall Cultural Festival, and Christmas concert, was fulfilling time for Jenny. "Sarah's mom is really nice to me." Tyler also looked up to Sarah, and sometimes talked about her kindness at home. Listening to her son's words, Jenny was grateful that the adults in the community watched over the children so warmly. "Yes, Sarah is a good person. We're in a blessed environment." At dinner time, the scene of the family of 3 gathered around the dining table was an ordinary family scene found anywhere. Tyler would talk excitedly about what happened at school, Jenny would share episodes from the library, and Mark would occasionally nod while quietly continuing his meal. Mark had certainly been less actively engaged in conversation lately than before, but Jenny thought it was due to work stress. When couples spend a long time together, it was natural for each to have such periods. At night, after putting Tyler to bed, Jenny would relax in the living room watching TV with Mark. She believed that the accumulation of ordinary daily life deepened family bonds. After several weeks had passed, Jenny began to notice subtle changes in her husband's behavior. Mark, who used to casually leave his smartphone on the living room table, now kept it close at hand at all times. During meals, during baths, as if guarding a precious treasure, he never let it out of his sight, which concerned her. When she woke up in the middle of the night, she could sometimes hear Mark getting out of bed and talking on the phone with someone in the hallway. Looking at the clock, it was sometimes past 2 a.m. At first, she thought it might be an emergency at the accounting firm, but the tone of voice sounded somehow intimate, not like he was talking about work. "Who were you talking to?" Jenny casually asked one morning. Mark paused for a moment but quickly returned to his usual expression. "Work stuff." One of the clients is a night owl, and I can only reach them late at night. The explanation sounded reasonable, but Mark's eyes seemed to be wandering somehow. However, Jenny wasn't used to doubting her husband. Because of the trust they had built over 10 years of marriage, she didn't pursue it further. Meanwhile, small changes were also becoming apparent in her son Tyler. While he used to tackle his homework energetically after coming home from school, lately he often lay on the sofa looking tired. "My stomach hurts today," Tyler would say while putting his hand on his forehead, which happened about once a week. When she took his temperature, it was normal, and he would be fine the next morning, so Jenny thought it was changes typical of the growth period. "It's because you're growing. Don't push yourself, and go to bed early when you're tired." While caring about her son's health as a mother, she didn't think these were signs of a serious illness. Children's health could be affected by various factors such as weather, school stress, and friendships. In PTA activities, her relationship with Sarah Williams was becoming more intimate. While working together on the Spring Sports Festival Preparation Committee, they began discussing each other's family situations. Sarah was a single mother who had experienced divorce and lived with her son. "Raising a child alone is really hard. I envy you having a husband, Jenny," Sarah would say, sometimes showing a somewhat lonely expression. Jenny sympathized with her situation and tried to support her as much as possible. When they ran late preparing for the sports festival, she would invite Sarah's son for dinner, and when taking the children to the park on weekends, she would call Sarah. However, Jenny sometimes felt a slight uneasiness about certain questions Sarah would ask. "Mark seems really busy lately. He must be coming home late, right?" She wondered why Sarah knew about her husband's schedule. But since they had many opportunities to meet through PTA activities and lived in the neighborhood, such information could naturally reach her ears. "Yes, it's accounting busy season, so it can't be helped. But he's working hard for the family, so I want to support him," Jenny answered while showing her love and understanding for her husband. Sarah smiled gently and placed her hand on Jenny's shoulder. "You're such a good wife. Mark is a lucky man." Those words had warmth, but at the same time seemed to contain some complex emotions. However, Jenny didn't think deeply about it. On the day of the sports festival, Jenny and Sarah arrived at school early in the morning as reception staff. While watching the children participate energetically in the competitions, they shared the joy of being parents. "Tyler is really athletic. I wish my child could be like that," Sarah said while watching Tyler win first place in the running race. Her expression showed admiration, but at the same time, a somewhat dark shadow of envy seemed to lurk. "Each child has their own strengths. Your son is very good at drawing, isn't he?" Jenny said modestly while praising Sarah's son's talent. However, Sarah's expression didn't completely brighten. After the sports festival ended, while having a celebratory dinner as a family, Tyler excitedly talked about the day's events. Sarah's mom said, "Tyler is so talented. I was so happy." His son's innocent joy made Jenny smile too. Having the adults in the community watch over her son so warmly was the most grateful thing as a mother. However, Mark's reaction was more subdued compared to before. While he did praise his son's performance, he seemed distracted and appeared to be concerned about his cell phone. "Good job. Thank you for your hard work today," Jenny offered words of appreciation to her husband, but Mark simply nodded and quickly retreated to his room. That night again, she could hear Mark talking on the phone late at night. This time he seemed to be talking for longer than before, and occasionally laughter was mixed in. Jenny became worried and went out to the hallway, but Mark hastily hung up the phone and returned to the bedroom as if nothing had happened. "Work call. It must be tough at this hour." "Yes, an urgent matter. It's resolved now, so it's fine." Jenny nodded at Mark's explanation. However, she felt a small seed of anxiety sprouting in her chest. At the PTA meeting the following week, while planning the Christmas concert with Sarah, something she casually said stuck in Jenny's mind. Men, when they get tired of home life, tend to seek stimulation outside. Especially when they reach middle age. The statement was made as a general observation, but the timing felt strangely relevant. It was as if she knew about Jenny's family situation. That's not true. Married couples should trust each other, right? Jenny answered lightly, but Sarah's expression showed a meaningful smile. While carrying such subtle uneasiness, Jenny's daily life continued peacefully on the surface. Library work, caring for her son, housework, and PTA activities. In the busy daily routine, there wasn't time to think deeply about her husband's changes or her friend's puzzling behavior. On the morning of that fateful day, she thought nothing would happen as usual. Tyler energetically prepared for school, and Mark left for work early. "Mom, I'll see you after school." Hearing her son's bright voice, Jenny believed today would be another peaceful day. In the afternoon, while organizing returned books at the library counter, Jenny's cell phone rang. Seeing Willowbrook Elementary School displayed on the screen, her heart felt like it stopped for a moment. A call from school during weekday class hours meant some emergency had occurred. "This is the nurse's office at Willowbrook Elementary School." The nurse's voice on the other end was clearly agitated. Jenny felt her hand holding the receiver trembling as she prepared for the worst. "Yes, this is Tyler's mother. Is something wrong?" Tyler suddenly vomited and collapsed during third period math class. He's conscious but has a pale complexion and continues to complain of nausea. "Could you please come pick him up immediately?" Jenny's mind went blank. What could have happened to her son who had been fine until this morning? Was it food poisoning or some serious illness? "I'll come right away." "Have you called an ambulance?" "Yes, we've already requested one. We recommend a detailed examination at the hospital as a precaution." After hanging up, Jenny explained the situation to her colleagues, got permission to leave early, and drove to the school. While driving, she called Mark's workplace with trembling hands. When the accounting firm's receptionist answered, she explained it was an emergency and asked to speak to her husband. "Mark? Tyler collapsed at school. He's being taken to the hospital, so can you come too?" However, the response from the other end of the phone was completely different from what Jenny had expected. "I'm at work. You're the mother, so handle it yourself." Mark's voice was cold, sounding as if it were someone else's problem. Jenny couldn't believe her ears. Why could her husband be so indifferent when their beloved son was in an emergency? But Tyler might be in serious condition. "You're his father, aren't you? Don't make such a big fuss. It's probably just overeating or something. This happened because you didn't manage things properly. It's your responsibility, isn't it?" Mark said this unilaterally and hung up before Jenny could argue. The mechanical tone from the receiver carved a deep wound in Jenny's heart. When she arrived at school, she could see several police cars parked in front of the school gate. Jenny was confused. Why were police involved in her son's illness? An ominous feeling was growing in her chest. When she hurried to the nurse's office, Principal Mrs. Johnson was waiting with a serious expression. Next to her stood a middle-aged male police officer. "Mrs. Cooper, I'm sorry. Tyler has already been transported by ambulance to St. Mary's Hospital." Hearing the principal's words, Jenny felt like she was about to collapse. Was her son's condition that serious? What exactly happened? Isn't this just a simple illness? In response to Jenny's question, the uniformed police officer stepped forward. His expression maintained professional composure, but his eyes showed sympathy. "I'm Detective Johnson. We're conducting an investigation as a precaution. Ma'am, please have a seat here." The police officer seated Jenny in a chair and took out a tablet. Jenny's heart was beating rapidly. What did an investigation mean? "I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but Tyler's symptoms don't appear to be simple food poisoning or illness. There's a high possibility of poisoning symptoms from some toxic substance, according to the doctor's report. Hearing the word poison, Jenny's world stopped for a moment. Did this mean someone had poisoned her beloved son? Such a thing couldn't possibly happen in reality. Poison? That's ridiculous. Who would poison Tyler? He's only a 9-year-old child. To investigate that, we checked the school's security camera footage. There's footage we'd like you to confirm. Detective Johnson turned the tablet screen toward Jenny. It showed the school playground. Children could be seen exercising. In a corner of the screen was an area where students' water bottles and lunch boxes were placed. This footage is from 10:40 a.m. today, during second period PE. Ma'am, please look at this footage. As the footage progressed, a woman could be seen approaching the water bottle area when no one was around. The person looked around cautiously and picked up a specific water bottle. Jenny recognized that woman's back. Wait, that person is. The moment the woman turned around, Jenny's blood ran cold. It was unmistakably Sarah Williams. The face of the friend she had become close to through PTA activities and trusted was there. In the footage, Sarah took out a small syringe from her bag and quickly injected a clear liquid into Tyler's water bottle. The series of actions was practiced, clearly a planned crime. After injecting the liquid, Sarah returned the water bottle to its original position and left the scene with an innocent expression. This is. Sarah was, why? Jenny stared at the screen, unable to accept reality. That a trusted friend had been poisoning her beloved son. Moreover, it was clearly an intentional act, not an accident. That's Mrs. Sarah Williams, correct? What kind of relationship did you have with her? In response to Detective Johnson's question, Jenny answered in confusion. We met through PTA activities, our sons are in the same class. I trusted her. Why would she do such a thing? We're currently searching for Mrs. Sarah Williams. Also, there are other matters that need investigation regarding this incident. The police officer's words suggested there were other serious facts yet to be revealed. Jenny felt various questions swirling in her mind. Other matters? What else could there be? I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but we need to investigate the relationship between your husband Mark Cooper and Mrs. Sarah Williams. At that moment, Jenny's world completely collapsed. It took several seconds for her to understand what the words about her husband and Sarah's relationship meant. You don't mean, my husband and Sarah? Details are still being confirmed, but it's been discovered that they had a close relationship for several months. Jenny leaned back in her chair and took a deep breath. The reality that her beloved husband was having an affair, and that his partner had poisoned her son, was too cruel. I need to go to the hospital. I'm worried about Tyler. Jenny tried to stand up, but her legs had no strength. Detective Johnson supported her. Of course. We'll take you to the hospital. And while prioritizing Tyler's recovery, we'll work to uncover the truth about this incident. On the way to the hospital in the patrol car, Jenny looked at the scenery flowing past the car window and thought. The peaceful family life she had believed in until this morning had been an illusion. Her husband's betrayal, her friend's terrible jealousy, and above all, the danger to her beloved son. All of this was reality. When they arrived at the hospital, Tyler was receiving treatment in the intensive care unit. According to the doctor's explanation, the amount of poison ingested wasn't very large, and there was hope for recovery with proper treatment. However, if discovery had been even a little later, it could have resulted in an irreversible situation. While holding her son's small hand, Jenny vowed. She would not forgive this betrayal. She would protect Tyler, reveal the truth, and achieve justice. That was her mission as a mother. While watching over her son's recovery in the hospital's intensive care unit, Jenny had time to face reality. According to detailed explanations from Dr. Miller, what Tyler had ingested was an organophosphorus compound contained in gardening insecticide. While the amount wasn't lethal, it was dangerous enough for a child's small body. Fortunately, thanks to early detection and prompt treatment, Tyler's life is not in danger. However, if discovery at school had been delayed by another hour, serious aftereffects could have remained. Listening to the doctor's words, Jenny gripped her son's hand tightly. She realized anew how terrifying Sarah's actions had been. She couldn't believe that a human being existed in this world who could do such cruel things to an innocent 9-year-old child. "Ma'am, Tyler has woken up." At the nurse's voice, she turned to see Tyler slowly opening his eyes. His complexion was still poor, but his consciousness was clear. "Mom, what happened to me?" Hearing her son's weak voice, tears overflowed from Jenny's eyes. "It's okay, Tyler. You're safe now. Mommy will always be by your side." Tyler nodded slightly but soon fell asleep again from fatigue. Jenny looked at her son's sleeping face and vowed in her heart to never forgive those who had put this child in danger. Detective Johnson, who had been waiting outside the hospital room, came with new information. "Mrs. Cooper, we've arrested Mrs. Sarah Williams. Also, we need to question your husband." "Did my husband know about this?" In response to Jenny's question, the police officer showed a complex expression. "It's been confirmed that Mark Cooper and Mrs. Sarah Williams had been in an affair for about 6 months. From cell phone call records and witness testimony, a close relationship was continuing." Jenny understood the true nature of those late-night phone calls. What her husband had been hiding wasn't work calls, but appointments with his mistress. While she was becoming friendly with Sarah through PTA activities, her husband was continuing an affair with her. "So does this mean my husband also knew about this poisoning?" "That's still under investigation." However, Mrs. Sarah Williams's motive is becoming clear. In the interrogation room at the police station, Sarah initially remained silent, but gradually began telling the truth when confronted with evidence. Jenny obtained police permission to watch the interrogation from behind the one-way mirror. "I truly loved Mark. I wanted to start a new life with him." Sarah's confession was filled with pathological possessiveness. "But as long as that child exists, Mark will never be completely mine. Tyler monopolizes his father's love. Compared to my son, why does only that child get attention?" When questioned by the interrogator, the depth of Sarah's jealousy became apparent. "At school, at PTA, in the neighborhood, everyone only praises Tyler. That child is really excellent, he's so promising. My son is trying hard too, but no one acknowledges him." Sarah's voice contained the twisted jealousy of a mother. Anger at her child being compared to other children, and despair at not being able to completely monopolize the heart of the man she loved had driven her to commit the crime. "At first, I intended to just cause mild illness. But the effect was weak, so I gradually increased the amount." Jenny was horrified. Tyler's recent frequent illness was due to Sarah's continuous poisoning. She had been gradually poisoning his water bottle, lunch, snacks, using various opportunities to add small amounts of poison. "I didn't tell Mark directly. But he understood my feelings. He said many times, if Tyler weren't here." This testimony led to Mark's arrest as an accomplice. While her husband hadn't actively wished for his son's elimination, he had failed to stop Sarah despite knowing her dangerous emotions. The next day, Jenny met with Mark in the detention center. Her husband looked completely haggard, having lost all his former dignity. "Jenny, I didn't know. I didn't know Sarah was doing such things." Listening to Mark's excuses, Jenny maintained her composure. "But you knew Sarah's feelings. You knew she thought Tyler was in the way, and you said nothing." "I just fell in love with her." At Mark's words, Jenny felt deep disappointment. Despite being in a position where he should protect his son as a father, she could not forgive her husband who had ignored his mistress's abnormal jealousy. "You're a failure as a father. Tyler trusted you." When visiting hours ended, Jenny was certain she would never meet her husband again. When she returned to the hospital, Tyler's condition had improved significantly. The effects of the poison were almost eliminated, and he could be discharged in a few days. "Mom, I trusted Sarah's mom, why did she hurt me?" To her son's pure question, Jenny struggled to find an appropriate answer. "Sometimes even adults make mistakes. But it's not because you did anything wrong. You did nothing wrong." Tyler listened quietly to his mother's words, but still seemed unable to fully understand. A few days later, the first hearing for Sarah and Mark took place in court. Sarah was charged with assault and attempted assault using poison, and Mark was charged as an accomplice. Sarah's final words in court were deeply engraved in Jenny's heart. "I just wanted to be happy with the person I loved. But as long as Tyler existed, that was impossible. I was envious that he was excellent and loved by everyone. My son should be loved the same way." Sarah's testimony was a tragic case of maternal love expressed in a distorted form. However, that was no reason to endanger an innocent 9-year-old child. The verdict was severe. Sarah received a 5-year prison sentence, and Mark received a guilty verdict with suspended execution. However, Mark was stripped of his accountant license and completely lost his social credibility. Listening to the verdict, Jenny had complex feelings. Justice had been served, but what was lost was also significant. 10 years of married life, a trusted friendship, and the wound carved into her son's pure heart. These could never be restored. On the way home from the hospital, Tyler said to his mother, "Mom, are we just the two of us now?" Jenny held her son's hand while answering, "But we have people who are truly important to us. Colleagues at the library, teachers at school, neighbors. Even without blood relations, there are people who care deeply about us." Tyler smiled slightly at his mother's words. "I'll be okay as long as I'm with you, Mom." At her son's words, Jenny felt hope. She was ready to start a new life, overcoming betrayal and despair. 6 months later, Jenny and Tyler were working on homework in the living room of their new apartment. Leaving their previous large house and living in a small apartment near the library meant a new start for both of them. The divorce proceedings were also completed, and alimony and child support from Mark had somewhat resolved their financial concerns. "Mom, we're stronger together, aren't we?" Tyler looked up from his math homework and smiled at his mother. 6 months had passed since that terrible incident, and his son's expression had regained its former brightness. Thanks to continued counseling, his trauma was gradually healing. "That's right, Tyler. Together we can overcome anything," Jenny answered while gently stroking her son's head. Her colleagues at the library had warmly supported them through this difficult time. Especially Mrs. Davis, a senior librarian, had cared for them like a real mother. Sarah Williams was currently serving time in state prison. She received a 5-year sentence for assault using poison, and until the end, she couldn't fully accept her actions. According to her ex-husband who visited her, Sarah still repeatedly said, "My son should have been more excellent, and it was unfair that only Tyler got attention." Her twisted jealousy continued to torment her even in prison. Meanwhile, Mark was struggling with social reintegration. Having lost his accountant license and credibility at his former job, he was working as a clerk at a small office, but his income was about 1/3 of what it used to be. Being on probation was also a major obstacle in job hunting. Several letters of apology from him had arrived, but Jenny never once wrote back. Everyone at the library said they'd help prepare for your upcoming birthday party. When Jenny said this, Tyler's face brightened. "Really? Will Mrs. Davis come too?" "Of course. She cares about you so much." Her library colleagues and neighbors had become like true family beyond blood relations. They always extended a helping hand when in trouble and celebrated together during joyful times. Jenny realized anew that family wasn't just about blood ties or legal relationships. "These people care about us more than Dad did." Jenny nodded deeply at Tyler's casual remark. More than his biological father, the library colleagues, school teachers, and neighbors truly cared about her son from their hearts. Love wasn't about the presence or absence of blood relations, but about having a caring heart for others, something she had learned over the past 6 months. At his new school, Tyler had grown into an even more compassionate child than before. Perhaps through his painful experience, he had learned to understand others' pain. He had built good relationships with classmates and made new friends. "Mom, I'm proud of you for protecting me." One night, before going to bed, Tyler said these words to his mother, making Jenny's chest feel warm. "Protecting you is natural. But you really did well too. You've grown into such a strong child, and Mommy is proud of you." Looking at the night view outside the window, Jenny reflected on past events. Her husband's betrayal, the terrible jealousy of someone she thought was a close friend, and the fear of her beloved son's life being endangered. All of this had actually happened. However, what she gained through that trial was also significant. Her bond with her son became deeper, and she was able to build relationships with truly trustworthy people. Above all, she acquired the strength to face difficulties without giving up. A true family is a relationship with people who cherish each other and support each other during difficult times. Jenny murmured this in her heart. Through this experience, she learned that emotional connections were far more important than blood relations or legal relationships like marriage. Her work at the library was also more fulfilling than ever. Thanks to the warm support of her colleagues, she had an environment where she could concentrate on work. During story time for children, Tyler would sometimes participate and help take care of younger children. In their new apartment where spring sunlight streamed through the windows, Jenny and Tyler continued walking toward a hope-filled future. The pain of betrayal might never completely disappear, but the bonds and growth gained by overcoming it had become irreplaceable treasures for both of them. A true family is a relationship with people connected by heart-to-heart bonds that transcend blood relations and marriage systems. Jenny and Tyler had learned firsthand that bonds based on love and trust are the greatest power for overcoming life's difficulties.